Hello and welcome to the Unnamed Automotive Podcast. My name is Sammy Haj Assad, and with me, as always, is my good friend and fellow automotive journalist, Benjamin Hunting. Say hi to the people, Ben.
Greetings, corporeal and non-corporeal listeners.
Greetings to everyone. If this is the first time you're listening to our podcast, thank you for trying something new. I really appreciate it, and I think Ben does too. And before we get started and get talking about all the vehicles we're going to be talking about today, I just want to reiterate Ben and I are a pair of automotive journalists. But more important than that, we're very good friends. Isn't that right, Ben?
That is accurate.
It is so accurate that I
Can something be so accurate, or is accurate like being pregnant? Like you're either pregnant or you're not. You're either accurate or you're not.
Pregnant.
Okay.
Anyways, we do this every week. We establish this rapport between me and Ben every week, and usually around this time I tell people where they can find Ben's latest work. But this time I'm going to let Ben handle that job. Can you do that?
Sammy, where can you find my latest work?
I don't know. I think I can find your latest work at publications like driving.ca, Motor Trend, and where else? Oh, Inside Hook.
And I think I can find your work at Electric Autonomy Canada.
Yeah.
Capital One.
Yes.
Driving.ca.
Nailed it. Perfect. 3 out of 3, baby.
All right. I was gonna push for a fourth, but I feel lucky. I'm gonna stick.
No, yeah, don't do it.
Stand on 3.
Ben, I actually don't want to talk about some new cars this week. I want to talk about some old cars that you are stashing in your garage.
Sammy,
can we do that?
It's summertime.
Summertime, and the living's easy.
Well, the living is complicated when you have old cars.
That's true.
Because this is the time of the year when I'm trying to enjoy the cars that I actually own instead of just driving press cars, which is great. But in Canada, where I live, and pretty much everywhere in Canada, there's only so many months of the year that aren't being assaulted by salt and snow and ice and all that stuff. So
yeah.
That's when you got to maximize the vehicles that you ostensibly enjoy. So there are always barriers to that when you own older cars, because I think most people who have project cars understand that the projects are never really completed. There's always one more thing to do, and sometimes those things can accumulate, or they can present a problem. Like you can have small issues on a car, Sammy, that don't impact its ability to drive, but do impact your ability to use the vehicle in a normal way. You know,
like rely on it.
Yeah, or put it in certain situations safely.
You're going to have to be a little bit more specific here. What are you talking about?
So my Jeep, and every Jeep that was built by Chrysler from like 1961 to 1991, or 63 to 91, sorry. The ones that have power windows, they have this really terrible system. It's called a flex track. And basically what it is like Jeep installed, or AMC, I guess, back in the day, installed this. It's like a roller coaster J in the door. And the J has a plastic track on it. It looks like a bicycle chain, but it's made of plastic.
Oh,
and
this is already going very poorly in my mind.
Anytime you use the words plastic and like moving chain, it's never... Yeah. It makes me think of, remember the Audis, the 4.2 engine that had the plastic valve guide, or sorry,
yes.
the guides for the timing chain, and the guides were made of plastic and they would just disintegrate over time.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a similar kind of idea.
That like practically really tanked Audi's reliability reputation.
Well, it makes it hard to own the S cars because they're so cool, but you know that at some point in the future, you're going to have to do like an engine out service to specifically deal with this one problem that they all have, right? So that's not great.
But we're not dealing with an engine. We're dealing with a window.
Yeah, but as I said, a window can really impede your ability to drive. So let me get back to how these fail and how often they fail. Chrysler did make a steel one for like 2 model years when they bought Jeep in like 87. I think the 89 and the 90 had like a steel chain, but they never made it as a part you could buy. It was only like a part that came with the brand new vehicles. All the replacement parts were plastic. So the only way you can get the steel chain is if you go to a junkyard and you luck out and you find someone who's still, if you find like a junker example that hasn't had it taken out of the doors. So everyone else has to deal with these these flex tracks. And they're called flex tracks because they're supposed to flex instead of break. But they don't do that. They just snap. And they attach to the window. At the base of the window, there's like one point of attachment. And it slides up and down. And every once in a while, it just can't take it anymore. And it ends its own life and it cracks.
Oh, God.
And when that happens, the window will usually start sinking down into the door. And you can't... Effectively, your vehicle is no longer secure. Like someone could just come along and push the window down. But more importantly, when you're driving around, like the vibration, I use these. It's got to the point where I was replacing 2 or 3 of these a year. I'm not exaggerating. Wow. Okay. I could get in and out of the door in like 10 minutes. You know, like that's how experienced. And like you can't see the job while you're doing it. Your hands are inside the door. You can take it out if you want, but it's a hassle. So if you just leave it in there, you're doing it blind. It sucks. You get cut up because, you know, doors are made of metal inside, especially Jeep. There's like no rounded edges. And when you're driving around, I started bringing these little rubber wedges with me that I would wedge in between the door sill and the window.
I see. Yeah.
But like it would still shake over bumps and stuff and eventually lower. So if it started to rain, you would get water in the vehicle. And if you're driving on the highway, windows in the back would start to go down and would get louder. And then finally...
And you can't be fiddling with those wedges back there.
No, and you can't park it anywhere because like people will see these wedges and realize they can just easily, it's already easy to break into the Jeep. I don't want to make it easier. So this is a simple problem that made it so I couldn't enjoy my Jeep. Like I had to, all the trips I took had to be point to point trips where I was always within eyesight of the Jeep and it could never rain. Like it could never be in the schedule, you know, like I had to be really certain that I was going to have nice weather. So this sucked. It's when I was moving last year, 2 of the windows were broken and I was like, okay, it's fine. I'll put it in the garage. I'll deal with it in the spring. I ordered new flex tracks because they're still available as reproductions. They're not expensive. They're like $15 or $20, but it's just the mental, I have to do this 2 or 3 times every single year. That sucks. Right. And, when the spring came, I took the Jeep out for the first drive of the year. I drive it into town. I drive it back. I'm in the garage. I'm putting my window up and the driver's side window cracks like right there,
God.
like the flex track. So now 3 of my 4 windows do not work.
Oh my God, Ben.
I'm like, I am so done with this. I'm frustrated. I don't drive the Jeep for a week or 2. And then I discover that the company that I buy my Jeep parts from the most, BJ's Off-Road, they're probably the biggest full-size Jeep supplier in North America. They've found a company that has made a full replacement for the window mechanism. So like a modern car, it has gears and an arm, right? And the arm goes up and it lifts the window and then it comes down and it drops it. And it's very basic. It's hard to break because it's so simple. It's just an electric motor. But it's never been available for Jeeps before. Some people have taken the similar mechanism out of an XJ, the smaller Cherokees, and like adapted them for the Jeep, lower Jeeps. But it's a huge hassle, and you have to really know what you're doing. And you have to fabricate parts and stuff, and that's not me. Like I'm not going to be doing that. So this comes out, and I'm excited because it seems like if I install this, I no longer have to install flex tracks all the time. And I have a set of the other issue with the Jeep motors is they don't get a lot of power because it runs the power through the switches, and the switches over time they degrade, they corrode. So there's a guy named Josh. Josh is he has a small company that manufactures electric parts for Jeeps, and he's been making these relays that pull power directly from the 12-volt system and send it to the motors. And I had a stack of these sitting at home, but I hadn't installed them because I'm like, you know what? I don't want to send huge amounts of power to these crappy flex tracks and just break them that much quicker.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? If I buy these arms for the Jeep, for the windows, and I install the relays at the same time, and I have a relay for the door locks, which the power door locks have never worked in my Jeep, I can just do this all at once. I have the garage now where I can just take it apart and leave it apart and do it on my own schedule. Then this seems to solve like a whole bunch of problems in one fell swoop. So
perfect.
I decided to do that.
Sounds like a perfect fit.
Yeah. The downside is it's like $500 Canadian per window.
Oh God. And you have, let me count them.
4 windows. Okay. It's absolutely nuts. Like that is a lot of money just to have power windows that work because the factory doesn't make them work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I went back and forth.
Yeah. It's crazy to me, right? Like, it sounds like if you could do anything to get off this plastic rail, this plastic chain that just gives up its life. I mean, to me, that was like failure point number one. But these other aspects of it that just seem like not built for long-term
No,
longevity.
not at all. And it's like, and I justified it, but it's $2,000 Canadian.
That's
it came
a
out,
ton, yeah.
after shipping and taxes, bringing it across the border. That's what it came out to.
Where was this company located?
They're in Washington State.
Oh yeah, okay.
And these are big things too. Like these are
Yeah.
they ship in a big box. Like it's a fairly hefty piece of equipment. I mean, it fits inside a door, but fully extended, it's large.
Okay.
I mean, but I bite the bullet. I do it. And I contact Haggerty and I'm like, hey, I have an idea for a story. What if there's like a simple part in your car that is super expensive to replace, but it's so frustrating that you're willing to take the expense? Like,
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting thing that every classic car owner has encountered. And I'm in the middle of encountering it. How about I write a story about that? So they're like, yeah, we want to hear about it. So I'm like, okay. With that in mind, I order the pieces. They get here. They sit for a long time because I had some life events come up and I was unable to deal with it. But over the last 2 weeks, I have been steadfastly installing each of these. And I didn't get any instructions with them. Like the people at BJ's, I like them a lot. They're very helpful and they're responsive for the most part to questions if you call them or send them emails about a job or a project. But I kept asking them, like a lot of the times for the relays, for example, they have videos that show you exactly how to install it. It's super helpful. They're like 15 minutes long. It from front to end. That's not, no one says that. From beginning to end, there's no mystery, right?
Okay.
So they don't have anything like that for these windows. It's kind of like, well, it's not that hard to do. You'll figure it out. And I'm like, nah, I need some instruction. So I get like about 8 or 9 lines in an email about like what I kind of need to do for the back window. And then like the front one's pretty much the same. It just bolts in a different place. And I'm like,
Gotcha.
okay. So I end up taking out, the cool thing about the Grand Wagoneer is it's very simple. So like removing the old window mechanism felt so good just to get that piece of crap out there. I mean, it still works. I could sell it to someone who needs it, but I just, having that dysfunctional equipment out of my Jeep was nice. But getting the new one in, it was a lot of puzzling and like figuring things out. And then like the rear windows need a brace for the motor so that it doesn't move when you give it power. And that was hard to squeeze in. The other problem is these Jeeps, they were not built according to a standard, right? Like each Jeep is really different.
Yeah, it's a different time of like consistency back then, right?
They were using old tooling from the 60s. Like it had worn out and it wore in specific areas. And you never, like when I redid the headliner a couple of years ago, the guy had laser measured a Wagoneer to make sure it would fit, and it didn't fit in mine at all, just because it's crappy manufacturing. So I managed to get it in. The rear door wasn't so bad. But when I put the rear window, once I had the relay in, when I put the window down, it would get down all the way to the bottom and then it wouldn't go up again. I'd have to help it up. So if I stopped it like at a quarter inch above the bottom, it was fine. But I think that the window guides in my Jeep are warped, and the rails where the window slides. And because of that, it's like once it gets to the bottom, it's at an angle where I don't think it can push up anymore.
Okay.
So I
Interesting.
did basically replacing the flawed system in the Jeep. The rear windows never like to go down in the first place with the old system. And I didn't like to play with fire. So like I didn't put them down that much in the back.
Yeah.
So now I have to keep in mind that until I replace these guides, and I do have new guides because I want to replace the glass on that side anyway. It's a bit pitted. But it's like you replace one thing and you discover another problem. And then up front, I discovered that 3 of the 4 window motors I got were wired in reverse. So up was down, and down was up. And I did some research online. This is not uncommon, apparently, when you order replacement power windows from almost anyone. You can choose to rewire the motor itself, or you can rewire the connector that it's attached to. So it's very possible that the motors were correct and the connectors I had were incorrect. But what I ended up doing was opening up the connectors and reversing the polarity in the connector.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That should make more sense. I mean, instead of doing the whole rewiring thing.
Yeah, and sometimes you can actually even remove the motor from the housing and reverse it 180 degrees, and it will do the same thing. You're basically changing the position of the connectors like physically on the motor. So I had to do that on 3 of the 4 windows, which was a little weird. But the bigger problem was the front window now with the new arm that lifts it and closes it, it can go down farther than it was designed to go down. And it hits up against the power door lock where there's like it makes kind of a brace. Like there's how do I describe this? There's a piece of metal that lifts the door lock and pulls it down, but it has to pass under the window. So there's almost like a frame where it goes straight down, 90-degree angle under the window, and then back up on the other side. Now the window will go down and hit that frame.
Oh.
So the first time I did it, when I had it wired in reverse, it's hard to remember. Like normally when you're putting a window up, the switch is going up, but this case it was going backwards, and I'm going backwards and I hit the thing and I didn't pull it off fast enough, and I kind of chipped the window at the bottom.
Oh shoot!
You'll never see it; it's inside the door. But I was like, if I do this again and again, it's going to crack the window. So I tried to get some guidance on what to do about that, and it was tough. But eventually, the BJ's guys were like, "Hey, look, the manual windows for the Jeep pickups had a stop inside of them that you can install on your Jeep." And they sent me a link to an eBay auction with one of them. So I bought one for like $20. I haven't installed it yet, but I think I could also make my own stop.
Okay.
But long story short, I have them all in now. With the relays, they work really well, except the ones in the back. Like I said, I'm having problems getting them to go up if they go all the way down. And I have this contact issue. The other problem I've run into was with my door lock relays. It works now. The button on the driver's side doesn't work at all. I probably have a bad switch. But on the passenger side, I can lock all my doors now with the power door lock, which never worked before. But they won't lift up. And I think that's because there's a spring in each of the doors that's just worn out. So when it's powered, nothing happens. And the other issue is I have intermittent contact on the relay in the passenger side, so it doesn't always work that window. And I think I'm just going to bypass the relay for now until I can get deeper into the wiring. But it's nice to, like, I took the Jeep out this weekend, I put like a few hundred miles on it, and it just felt really good to drive it and not have to worry about parking it and not have to worry about the doors. The windows will never drop into the door again. Like, it's physically impossible. The failure mode for these lifters is it stays in the position it's in. You know, like it's not like a J-track or a flex track that's just going to keep sinking because there's no friction on it. So that was nice. I had a good sense of accomplishment after doing it, especially since I kind of had to figure out most of it on my own, which can be frustrating, as I mentioned, but also, you know, you feel good afterwards. When's the last time you felt good after something, Sammy?
Never. Really, honestly, it's been a while. But it's such at least you're lucky you've got a car with a community and responsive vendors here. I always thought that, you know, that these sort of things will take a change once, you're going to laugh, the idea of like 3D printing becomes a bit more like mainstream.
I think there are a lot of people who are out there 3D printing parts for old cars. At least I've come across a lot of them.
Have you considered getting a 3D printer? Because we're not looking for massive things. Sometimes you just need like you said, like a stop or like a little button somewhere. I don't
really have design skills like that.
I think you can make them. I think there's or you can maybe get the specs from the vendor. They'd be shooting themselves in the foot by doing so, but hey. You don't think so?
So one of my creative partners, Angela Hodge, she's a designer and we make comic books together. She has a 3D printer at home and she's been doing a lot of additive printing, and in her day job, she is a product designer. So she designs all kinds of products, cosmetics, toys, all sorts of things. And she has a very high skill set for that. And even for her, it's trial and error. Like, we've been producing some figurines for our comic books based on the characters, and trying to get them to come out right, she really has to work at it. It can be a challenge. So
all right, I'm sorry.
I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but I don't think I personally have the skills to design a part I could 3D print. I think if I worked collaboratively with her, though, it might be a different story.
Maybe.
And I don't understand a lot of stuff about like the filament you would use, and
that's true. None of it would be like automotive grade, so who knows?
I mean, maybe you can get automotive grade though. Doesn't Tim Stevens, another automotive writer colleague of ours, doesn't he print stuff he restores pinball games?
Okay.
And I think he 3D prints components for his pinball games.
Because sounds like he needs to get on the podcast and tell us how he can help you out.
Shout out to Tim if he's listening. That's an open call. I mean, you never know. But it's definitely an intriguing idea, Sammy. But I mean, even installing parts someone else has made for me can be difficult. So once I get into the world where I'm installing parts that I made, that's like one more step down the crazy train, I think.
Okay, now I didn't want to just talk about your Jeep because you've got another older car in your garage that's worth chatting about.
And I'm also not driving that one.
Yes. Okay.
I am tomorrow because what happened was I was at the racetrack I think you remember, listeners probably remember a couple of weeks ago I talked about taking my Cadillac to the racetrack, which I hadn't done in forever. And that's because the Datsun, I have Kone adjustable shocks in the Datsun as part of a what are they called? Coilovers? That's what they're called, right?
Yes.
Yeah, coilover shocks from a It's been a long day. I did a lot of driving today. Coilover shocks from a company called Technotoy Tuning. And Technotoy is very cool. They make a lot of performance parts for platforms that you wouldn't think they would. Like they do Hachiroku stuff. They do S13, S15. They do the S30, the Nissan Z that I have, Datsun Z. And they're pretty great. And I was at the track in New Hampshire in May, and I was having a problem where the car kept bottoming out, coming out of a corner. Never done that before. And it turned out that I was unable, the shocks, my right rear shock was no longer adjusting properly. It would not hold adjustment. And I was getting a little bit of leakage. So I called up Technotoy and I was like, look, I have one bad shock, one good shock. Is this something I can repair? Or is this a replacement? And they're like, it's a replacement. And I'm like, okay, can I replace? They're like, but it's under warranty. And I'm like, okay, can I get one replaced under warranty? And then I'll buy the other one because you should replace shocks in pairs, right? Yeah, otherwise, you don't get the same response.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you know what? We'll do them both under warranty. So they're like, we'll send you the shocks and, we'll put a deposit on your card and then just send us back the old ones. We'll remove the deposit. I'm like, okay, that sounds great. So it's been like a month I've had these because I was initially going to do them myself. But there's no way for me to remove the shock from the coilover without removing it entirely from the car. There's a lot to disconnect in the suspension. And once that happens, it's no longer aligned.
Yeah.
And once it's no longer aligned, I can't take it anywhere to get aligned.
You can't do anything. Yeah.
So and there's not very many, I don't know anyone out where I live now in the country who is experienced with track cars. I've gone to some
come on. Really?
Well, I live you've been to where I live.
I will say on the way, I noticed that there were a lot of guys with with I wouldn't call them, maybe the race cars. Yeah, maybe the race cars. But not, I'm thinking like an hour out of your way. So maybe that's not fair. I shouldn't be
an hour out of my way is exactly where I'm going.
Exactly. So there you go. That's a lot of fuel to spend on a tow over there.
The race shop that has been maintaining my car since day one is an hour out of the way. So I'm going there because I've been to mainstream alignment shops before to try and get more aggressive alignment settings, and a lot of their technicians won't do it, or they don't know how to do it. And it gets weird real fast. So I prefer to go to a race shop where they're like, yeah, we'll give you like 3 degrees of negative camber and like as much caster as we can get into it. And since I'd have to go there anyway to get the alignment done, I might as well have them do the job with a lift. Yeah. And it'll be so much faster. But it's just a question of, now that I live far away, I have to do all this scheduling. Like, how do I get there? How do I get back? When are they available? My race shop just merged with another shop and they changed location. So they're actually closer to me, but they're also way more busy now. And they do a ton of Porsche work. That's their bread and butter. So being able to squeeze in, and in Quebec, we have, at the end of the month, there's holidays, which is like, it's called construction holidays, where pretty much most of the trades shut down for 2 weeks. And even if you're not in construction, a lot of, garages and stuff follow this. It's a common thing. So a shout out to AGM Performance, and specifically Andrew at AGM Performance, who's going to get those shocks in this week.
Nicely done. Okay.
Yeah, and it'll be nice because I haven't really been driving the Datsun around here on the roads, because even though they're nice country roads for fun driving, wow, I think I just had a brain freeze there. When we first moved in the fall, I was so busy just moving, and then it was bad weather, right? It's wintertime. And then in the spring, the first thing I did was go to the track and break the shocks. So like, it's just been sitting in the garage, waiting for it to be driven. And I have my next track event isn't until August, so I'm going to have some time to drive between now and then. That's
fortunate. Yeah. Your track car, I mean, every year I ask you what's going on with it, but I want to know on your end, has it like shown steady progress? Is this like in terms of its capabilities or its performance over the years, or is this a driver skill level thing that you think as you become more accustomed to it and comfortable driving it, you now know what you want out of the car, what you expect out of it, and how to achieve that through either modifications or repairs or
Well, the driver mod is always the best mod to make to any car.
I agree with that. Yes.
You know, it's like seat time, seat time, seat time, seat time. I can't, anyone out there who's
in
listening,
anything really.
Yeah, if you're interested in any kind of motorsports, take all the money that you were going to spend on performance parts and spend it on events, going to driving schools, having someone sitting beside you who's more experienced, who's an instructor, and just spending that time with them, spending time in your car in a high performance environment. When I first started road racing in, I want to say 2009, 2000, and I cannot believe how bad a driver I was when I first started. And you really have no idea of the habits you've picked up and the way, like, driving on the street is very different from driving on the track, but learning to drive on the track can improve your driving in all situations. So it was really revelatory to be told, you know, don't do this, try this, don't do that, try this instead. And that's my strongest recommendation. And then, you know, maybe better tires and brakes, or just brake fluid or pads. And that's pretty much all you need. Like, you need something that you need your car to be able to withstand the stress of being in a high speed environment. So, you know, brake fluid that is higher temperature and tires that aren't going to chunk up or tear. But I don't even mean like high performance tires. You can get like a pretty decent set of street tires, summer tires, put them on and have a good time. So, that kind of answers your question. That kind of answers your question, but at the same time,
yeah,
what I think I'm going to do next with the car is unrelated to performance, and it's something I should have done a long time ago, but didn't. But as I get older, I think about it more and more. Can you guess what that is? It's not leaving a legacy behind.
No, I can't imagine.
It's not a stolen treasure map.
I know. You've been talking about that one for a while, though.
I don't have a roll bar in my car.
Oh my God, Ben! What? Really?
Yeah, I don't have a roll bar, and my car is a death trap. Like,
it has less rigidity than a tin can.
If I hit something in my car, it's bad news for me.
Yeah,
really bad. Any car from the 70s, especially a Japanese car from the 70s, which is small and built economically, it's not going to survive in a crash. So I don't want to put a full cage in the car because driving a caged car on the street is a bad idea. You can really hurt yourself badly just by having, I know you can pad it, but if you have a cage around you, a cage is designed to be hit with a helmet with your head. It's not designed to have your arms flail into it, your legs, your unprotected head. You can really hurt yourself badly. So I do want a bar in the back so that if I roll, I'm protected. I just haven't got around to it because it's not cheap to do, to have it done properly, and you don't want to do it cheaply. So like, it's something I've been saving for. That's probably the next big job I'll do with it. But suspension wise, I think I'm pretty much set on the car. If I go to a more aggressive spring rate, I'm right at the verge where it might not be drivable on the street anymore. And the other thing is too, with the way the Datsun is designed, it's flexible to the point where if you start getting super stiff with springs, it's not going to take them well. And it might become undrivable on the track as well.
That's so it. Yeah.
I don't really think I need more power because it's not really why I'm there. And I think if I would like to, the maximum power I'd ever want from the car is probably 200 at the wheels. And I'm at 145 at the wheels right now. And a new engine management system would be nice to be able to diagnose things when they break and also not be reliant on very old fuel injection parts that are getting harder and harder to find. Mm-hmm. But other than that, like, if I wanted to go faster on the racetrack, I would change vehicles. I think that's like, obviously when I say faster, I want to get faster as a driver and improve as a driver. I might try slick tires, which I've never gone to a full slick. But in terms of power, going fast is increasingly frightening. And that's something that I've come to terms with over time. There's tracks like Watkins Glen where I'm going quick enough where if something goes wrong, it's really bad news. And I don't need to go that fast. That's not why I'm there. I'm not there to win a trophy. And like, coming to terms with that has really influenced how I look at the car as a project.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. And I think, you know, you've got it's interesting. It's a change of like mindset after doing so many of them and getting what you want out of your experience. Now you want to chase that experience rather than, I don't know, the thrill of something else, I guess. But
Like having the Cadillac at the last
Yeah.
track event, I mean, there were parts of the track where I lifted because it's too fast and I
Yeah.
don't want that, you know? And younger me, I mean, younger me until I had a very bad car accident would not have understood that. But I have had those really bad car accidents and dealt with the trauma that comes after that and trying to build back up to being able to feel safe out on the road again. And I don't want to expand that to a racetrack situation. I'm there to have fun. I'm not there to impress anybody. And I'm there for the experience of driving my old car on a track, as difficult as that might be at times.
Well, that's very cool. I really appreciate you sharing those experiences with your old cars with us. And I actually really encourage our listeners to share their experiences with us, because I know we have a ton of listeners with some really cool cars. And I'm always eager to hear about them. Some of my favorites we've had a listener with somebody with a 3000 GT VR4, and I've been like living vicariously through this guy. I love it.
Sammy talks about the VR4 probably like 2 or 3 times a month.
I do it all the time. I love it. And I would love to hear more from our listeners who have some cool cars that or experiences with their older vehicles. So in order to do that, you can head on over to our website, unnamedautomotivepodcast.com. There's a contact form there. You fill it out and it lands in our inbox, and we read it and we talk about it on the next episode. Or you can reach out to us on social media. You can find Ben on Instagram. He's at Hunting Benjamin. Or you can find me on X. I think it's called X.com. I'm Sammy_ha, like you're laughing. Or you can email us the old-fashioned way. It's benjamin@benjaminhunting.com. What else is there to talk about? Yeah.
Well, you can go to the website, and did you mention that we are on every podcatcher?
We are on every kind of podcast.
Pretty much every podcatcher. So you can just search for us, leave us a review. Anything you say, any kind of stars, all that stuff helps. It's nice to kind of expand the audience and just get more people listening, which is always fun, because then we hear from more people. But we wanted to talk about the fact that it's summer now, like, as obviously, you know, I'm talking about summer cars, and summer brings travel with it. And we're going to be traveling, both of us, for most of the month of July.
Yeah.
And we were trying to figure out how to deal with that from a episode perspective, because we're not going to be driving so many cars, because we're going to be doing other things. But we didn't want to leave you guys in the lurch and just not put anything up at all. So we recorded this today, which is going to be our first episode of the month. But what we're going to do throughout the rest of the month, and we've never done this before, so we're curious to see what you guys think. We're going to take some of the bonus episodes from the past, which are episodes that, you know, star car face off, that kind of thing, that Sammy and I really like. And we're going to be republishing them for this month. And I know some of you are thinking, oh no, it's just reruns. But these episodes are pretty old. Like, I want to say 2018, maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
So chances are if you're a longtime listener, you haven't heard them in a long time. Even if you are a longtime listener, not everyone listened to the bonus episodes. They were not universally popular. I don't understand why, but they might show you a fun, kind of light, breezy side of the podcast. We're going to be putting those up, and we're also going to be putting up a fun interview we did about Radwood with Bradley Brownell, and he is. Sammy, are we going to do the Bradley interview, or are we going to do the Chad interview?
I don't know.
Where Chad talks about going to Morocco and driving through the desert with the Nissan Frontier.
I'm a sucker for Chad interviews.
I tell you what, it's going to be a surprise.
Okay, perfect.
It's going to be one of those things.
Toss a coin here.
One of those things. So for the rest of the month of July, you are going to hear quote unquote classic episodes. Let us know what you think of this strategy. We try to bank as many episodes in advance as we can, but, you know, sometimes it's just difficult to do that. And we'd rather there be something up, and we'd rather there be episodes that we enjoy, that we think are fun, than just have nothing at all. So we will be talking to you again in about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And
with fresh new stuff, of course.
Fresh new stuff. Yeah, I will be driving some cars. Sammy will be experiencing some really unusual car stuff on his travels, as he always does to this
car culture
particular area. Sammy, where are you going?
I'm going to the Middle East, of course. Yeah.
So the Middle East has a very unique and intriguing car culture.
Different car culture. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to be able to talk about that, and that's always fun. So
absolutely.
Hope that you stick with us through this summer break, and we will see you again on the other side.
Sounds good. See you.